All right, I'm Chris Avina with the American Outdoor News Podcast. I'm here with my good friend Mike Arnold. Mike, thanks so much for taking the time to speak to us today.
Oh, wow. It's always a pleasure to be on your podcast, dude. I really appreciate it. We tried at SCI.
We did, but the lobby was just a little too noisy for us.
I think we were not wanting to leave the lobby because there was a beverage stand nearby, but yeah, I think that's what it was.
That was the issue right there. We were next to the bar, the bourbon was flowing, and the speech was slurring.
Oh, no, I don't think there was slurred speech. We weren't that far into it, but
No,
it was
we're only a
loud. It
couple
was
in.
loud. Oh, well, how are you doing, by the way?
Me, I'm living the dream. You know that.
Yeah, me too. I love my life.
How was SCI for you?
SCI was very, very good. We did not know going in, we being Francis and myself, my wife Francis and me, um, we didn't know going in that we were going to be doing so many interviews and reels. You do these all the time.
Yeah.
For our social media, we had not done, Frances had done reels associated with her fabric art, but I hadn't, I don't know, not many reels, if any at all. And we went in there and I've forgotten how many we came out with, 8, something like that. And what that reflected is we connected with old friends, yes, but also with some new folks. And boy, people love reels on social media. I mean, I love
You
them.
know, it's such an effective marketing tool where
Yeah.
um, it just gives a soundbite of what the whole conversation was about.
Yeah, and and the thing about it is we were able at SCI, the nice thing, or DSC either. We love Dallas obviously a lot as well, but at either place or that kind of a place, a convention where the vendors are there to sell, they're really not there to take up a whole lot of time with people like me.
Yeah,
And so if you walk up to them and say, all I want is a minute and a half of your time once I'm set up. So you just go ahead and do your stuff and we'll set up. Anyway, it worked out really well and we didn't feel like we were intrusive or losing money for them. Anyway, I learned a good lesson at SCI, I have to admit. But SCI also, boy, it was busy. There were so many folks, and that is a
it,
good sign. That is a
it was a
very good
great
sign.
show.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's not just a good sign, I don't think, for SCI, although it is. It's a good reflection of them, but it's also a great sign to me for shooting and hunting. I like that. I like that our community is actually larger probably than its opponents want it to be.
yeah, yeah. It was probably one of the largest shows that consumer shows, other than Harrisburg, that I've actually been to in a while. The crowd was great. The vendors were great. SCI treated everybody so well. And for me, I didn't get to see a lot of the floor because I was penned up in my office doing interviews all weekend. But it was a lot of fun, I gotta say.
Oh, it was. You go to probably, well, you do. You go to more conventions than I do because you go to the SHOT Show, right? I haven't been going to the
Yeah,
SHOT Show. And so you go to all of these, and I come out of the conventions pretty tired, uh, but I
yeah.
feel like they're crucial for me to see new things and to get excited about new things as a writer and as now a podcaster and a speaker, but just to get enthused about our community. I love that.
There's just so much. Well, there's so much going on as far as the industry itself. Um, just constant news going on, constant battle for our Second Amendment rights, what's going on in Colorado and California, trying to chip away at our hunting rights. So these
Yeah.
shows are really vital to what we do because um, it keeps everybody in the know of
Hmm.
what's going on, not just what's going on in their state, what's going on around the country and around the world as well. Fighting Sadie's
Exactly.
permits and uh, different hunts from around the world. It influences every aspect of what we do.
Well, it does. And for me, of course, with the emphasis on conservation and community outreach to connect with people, like this time I connected, it was actually, interestingly enough, after the show as Daniela Fanzoy of Fanzoy Fine Rifles. They're one of our sponsors actually on the podcast. But that aside, the conservation work that they do by doing these works of art on rifles that are, well, they're way out of my price range. I told Daniela if I pick one up, I want a air cushion underneath it in case I drop the darn thing. But the beauty of these, and they do it to actually see and project to the purchaser, but also to the community, why we should be conservation minded.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's amazing to then connect with folks like that at these shows. That's what I come away with, is all like jazzed up that, about all of the work that's being done by other people. I can write about
yeah.
it, but they're the ones doing the work.
Well, the truth is, we all have to get involved. We all have to do our part, whether you're a member at Dallas Safari Club International, Conservation Force, Sportsmen's Alliance. We're all
Mhm.
fighting for the same goal. We're trying to
Exactly.
keep our heritage alive to pass it down to the next generation.
Yep. Exactly.
Now, let's talk a little bit about what you do because you're like an onion, Mike. You got so many layers of what you do. You're a wildlife biologist. You go on these outstanding adventures. You're a outdoor writer. You're now a podcaster. Uh, what really gets you going about what we do?
Well, you and I laughed actually, yesterday when you tried to call me and I was in class at the University of Georgia. I told you corrupting young people's minds, and I had to block you, in the middle of it. And I actually took you off the screen, and my kids looked at me because it popped up on my PowerPoint screen. This is an anecdote for all your listeners. And they looked at me and I said, he's a really good friend from New York and he swears all the time. I can't let y'all see that when he's loose. They just looked at me and I said, never mind. They don't understand my sense of humor. But yeah, I do wear a lot of hats. I seriously love my life. I love being a professor. I love doing my science. I am about to retire from that actually after I started doing research science in 1975 as a freshman
Wow.
in college. I know I'm an old dude. I'm not as old as Larry Weissoon. I just want to point out to everybody out there, I'm really young compared to Larry. He's darn near dead. You know,
God
make sure
forbid.
make sure he listens to this one. No, so I do that, but it's all related around all of my writing, my speaking, the podcast, everything else is related around conservation biology. And like you said, I work on wildlife. I work on a lot of different kinds of organisms, and through my career, a lot of different kinds of crazy organisms. But I really focus on providing or trying to provide a voice from a scientific view and a world traveler view, but a scientific view of what are the stories out there that tell why hunting and the shooting sports in North America, hunting and fishing, are so important for conservation. They
Hmm.
are the basis, you know this, the money that is generated by hunters and sportsmen and women fishing and shooters who go out to the range, who are at the SHOT Show probably. You know, those vendors, the folks who are generating that money are the ones conserving habitat, species, all the places that people like to go out and walk, who don't
Yeah.
hunt. So we are the generators of that conservation effort through our money. We are it. And if they get rid
It's
of
not.
us,
It's
you
not
know,
just about conservation of our hunting privileges. It's conservation of the land that
exactly.
people use for hiking, kayaking, camping. We're the watchdogs of that because they're not doing
We
it.
are. Well, we are it, and it's, our North American model, U.S. model, is based on the Pittman-Robertson Act
Hmm.
another act that's out there that is for fishing. But those acts, obviously, as you know, set up excise taxes, high excise taxes, 11%
Yeah.
on the everything we purchase as hunters and as fishermen, and so that money is what goes directly to the states and their wildlife offices who purchase the land and maintain the land and all that for, like you said, non-hunters, and hunters. So it's
Well,
not just for game animals.
something that really needs to be showcased
Hmm.
is that Pittman Robertson Act and the fishing and whatnot. That's a self-imposed tax. We said as sportsmen, we want this tax on all our goods and services, our licensing, our firearms,
Hmm.
our ammunition, and the like. That 11% comes off the top and goes directly towards conservation. It don't go to a government agency that plays with the funds and says,
Yep.
well, we'll put a little bit here and we'll keep a little there. It goes directly to what it was supposed to be done.
Yep. It really does. And the nice, and you see at the federal level, the last administration really wanted to get their hands on that Pittman
Hmm.
Robertson and the Johnson Dingle for fishing and stuff, archery. They wanted to get their hands on it, and it was a philosophical reason too. They want to stop hunting. They
Yeah.
believe that, that's just not the way to do it. And you look at it and you go, folks, this is what, if it pays, it stays. And it's all over the world, it's the same. And when it has value, and by it, I mean the landscape and the animals and plants that are within it, when they have value, you don't turn them into agricultural systems or build a town on them or mine them or deforest them or whatever it is, depending on the area you're in. You don't do that. You keep it because they have more value as a wild area. And that's what we all want. That's what I want for my friends who don't hunt, who want a backpack.
Yeah.
But they need to support us because we're the ones who are actually, like you said, the guardians of those areas. We really are.
Well,
If they get rid of
uh,
us, those areas won't be there.
well, again, Mike, there's a huge difference between what we do as far as conservation, because they'll say, well, we're going to set this aside as preservation land. And there's a big difference between preservation and conservation. The
Exactly.
conservation states, well, yes, we're revitalizing this piece of property, but we're using it. The preservation of it says, we're going to leave this here. You can look at it, but you're not allowed to use it. Don't step on it. You can't use it, but we're setting this aside as preserve land. And
Yep.
you
And
know,
exactly. And what people don't understand a lot of times is that to do nature right, to do right by nature, maybe is the better way to say that, is to manage it. There is no habitat or landscape out there on this globe of ours, this precious globe of ours, that is not quote unquote disturbed. And so we have to manage landscapes, not preserve them. Because if we try to preserve, what we end up is devastating those landscapes because we allow the population booms and busts. And that's coming from a biologist who has studied these kinds of processes. You cannot leave it alone. You have to manage it. Otherwise, you end up with devastated landscapes. We see that in Africa where the elephants are overpopulated, and people hearing this who don't know about it, hunters and non-hunters, are probably going to go, what in the world is he talking about? We all know that elephants are endangered. No. Elephants are locally endangered and extinct in certain environments where they have built towns and devastated the environment where the elephants can't actually use it. But where they are, they have to be managed. Kruger is becoming a Kruger National Park in South Africa that's supposed to be a jewel and could be, used to manage its elephant population and produce a huge amount of protein by keeping the elephants in the right balance. Political pressure from outside, in particular, said, oh, you can't kill elephants. Now it's becoming a lunar scape because of elephant damage. And Botswana's the same way. They're trying desperately now under a wiser government, trying to control the elephant population, get it down to manageable levels. So anyway, I'm preaching to the choir, but we need to understand that we have to
give an example on that, Mike. You have farmers in South Africa, Botswana, wherever they are, that spent years developing their property, developing their crop to feed a village, to make a living. An elephant herd, or a few elephants, could come in and decimate that crop overnight. So everything a farmer did to make a living for that year, he lost all his income. That's right. I guess that's equal to a wildfire in California wiping out somebody's farm. All right, so their livelihood is gone for the year. Is it good for next year? Maybe, maybe not.
And also, once again, our buddy Larry Weishuhn shared a cartoon that he saw with me, a meme of, and I'm sure he's told you this one too, but he said the way that outsiders to Africa want to determine what Africans do with native Africans do with their property is like having a group of Africans sitting around the fire pit, and that was what the meme was, and they're all sitting around trying to decide what the policy of white-tailed deer management's going to be in Texas. And it's the same sort of thing. How would we respond? How should we respond? Hey, this is our commodity here, the white-tailed deer, so we need to be able to manage it. The black and white Africans ought to be able to be left alone to manage the way that they should. When they are doing it, we can give them, if they ask, outsiders to help them come in and help, give advice, fine. But in the end, it is their commodity, it is their land, it is their property. And by law, it's their property in terms of the animals, and they should be allowed to manage those. And so the trophy bands and all this sort of thing, it's putting, I call it just the newest kind of colonialism. The anti-hunters are colonialists telling the black Africans in particular, no, you're not smart enough to be able to figure out how to utilize your commodities, your property. And
they're putting a stranglehold.
They don't like hearing that. Well, and they don't, the non-hunters, the anti-hunters in particular, do not like hearing that message. that no, you're just being racist and and colonialist. Boy, they hate that.
No.
But I'm like, you're just treating these folks like they don't know how to manage their own property. And they do. In many cases, they do. So,
They've been
but
there a
like
lot
I
longer
say,
than we're here.
they have to deal with, like you said, they have to deal with dangerous animals, in many cases, devastating animals as well. And they need to be allowed to manage those animals instead of being
Sure.
told, no, 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 you can't shoot an elephant, even if it's just, like you said, destroying your livelihood and also killing people.
But it also feeds a village.
Exactly. That's the thing that people, I talked to my class yesterday at University of Georgia. We talked about the utilization of protein and why a developing country is in danger of overutilizing. And this is the thing that also surprises people a lot of times. I use the United States in our development as Europeans entered as an example of a developing country that overutilized its protein sources. Just, because we talk a lot about Africa and that sort of thing, in developing countries, various places in South America, Central America, and that's fine. And those are good examples, but the United States shores, when we hit the eastern shores, there were bison east of the Mississippi, there were elk, there were white-tailed deer, there were turkeys, there were ducks. By 1900, they weren't here. In your New York and my Georgia, in where I'm living now, it was, white-tailed deer were extinct. And the reason they're back,
in Georgia.
There were no whitetail, here. And the turkeys were gone, the ducks were gone, the bison were gone, the elk were gone.
Bison were decimated.
And so that was east of the Mississippi, that we had all this stuff, as well, of course, as west. So we look at it and we go, well, why are they back? Why did I hit one the other day? A white-tailed deer. Well, that's unfortunate, but the reason they're back, once again, they started coming back in the 30s, and there were a couple of reasons, but the main reason was, once again, the Pittman-Robertson Act and the investment, because that's when it was it came into being.
Yeah, it's funny because I actually I interviewed Travis Tritt, who's a big upland game hunter, and he said growing up, they never saw any whitetail by him in Georgia. And if you saw a deer track, it was a big thing. It was like the whole town, wow, there's a deer track, But over time, and through Pittman Robertson, we actually were able to cultivate the herds. And now there's a healthy population back in Georgia.
Well, there is. And I look at Texas, where I grew up, and it was exactly the same thing that Mr. Tritt told you. When I was growing up I was born in 57, so I grew up in a place outside of Abilene, Texas, in the country. We had lots of different kinds of animals there. We didn't have turkeys and we didn't have deer, white-tailed deer. It is now one of the best places today to hunt white-tailed deer. In that area, it's a mecca for white-tailed deer hunting and for turkey hunting. And why was that?
Yeah.
Well, because of the input from the funds from hunters, and the expansion of those areas allowed the deer to expand and come back, and the turkey as well, and other animals and plants as well.
Yeah, but turkey population on Long Island, where I am, there wasn't any. They were reintroduced about 20 years ago. Now they're everywhere. So
it always amuses me, but also my ignorance amuses me, that when I think of Long Island, New York, I assume it's just like solid houses, but it's one of the prettiest places in the frickin' world if you actually visit.
You're
but you don't want to tell people that. Because you don't want all of us moving there. But it is a beautiful area.
We actually have Boone and Crockett deer here. We have 150, 170-inch deer here because there are virtually, well, now we're starting to see coyote, but for decades, Long Island was one of the only North American landmasses without coyote. So the only predators they had was us. And they got old, they got big, and they just kept moving west and taking over the island.
Well, and the thing about it is you have a lot of natural areas there. And see, that's what I have in my brain is you don't have natural areas on Long Island. You just have housing developments. But that's not true.
Well, we do have like the Pine Barrens and whatnot, where it's state-run space, but a lot of it is urban hunting. A lot of
Hmm.
the areas have 2 acre properties, 5 acre property zoning, and people allow hunters to hunt their property to keep the deer off the expensive landscaping that they just paid for.
Off the golf courses.
Yeah. So, you are an outdoor writer. You've written a couple books. Some you might see advertised in the American Outdoor News magazine this month, as well as a really interesting article about quail hunting.
Absolutely. Well, thank you once again for allowing me to be a part of your wonderful publication. I tell people about it all the time. And yes, we had a marvelous time on a plantation down here. I bet Mr. Tritt is actually Travis Tritt has been on it, Dorchester Plantation. In fact, I'm pretty certain he has. But wonderful area for hunting, and it's one of those opportunities that just pop up. And actually went 2 weeks. We went, and then 2 weeks later, I got to go again for a different event there. So it was wonderful.
I saw that.
Yeah, so it's just a marvelous time there, hunting quail and the old tradition behind the pointers and the flushers. And I wish I could hit the darn things better than I do, but that's okay. I always tell people I'm not great with the shotgun. All these gun riders that can hit anything with anything. I'm like,
Yeah, right.
well, I just am not there with a lot. But we got a lot of quail actually. And we had a meal the other day, and we're going to cook them again pretty soon. We came back with quite a few, and we're going to cook them again pretty soon. And you're going to see some blog posts about those quail. I
All right,
love
great.
now, I'm not the cuisine. I cook a lot of Indian food, and I cook a lot of Italian food. Not as good as your Italian food, by the way. But that's because of your ancestry. But I cook a lot of those things, all fancy schmancy meals. Quail, I fry them. I do them just like I grew up. I fry them, and then I make cream gravy, and I make potatoes in the oven. And I tell you what, what does Jeff Foxworthy say? My tongue would knock my face off because. That's old. That is standard comfort food for me. But anyway, we
Hey,
did that.
traditions.
Yes, and yeah, you have a book that's advertised in your wonderful magazine, and it's Bringing Back the Wild. That's my last one that came out last year in July 2025 in July, and it talks about what you and I have talked about. It talks about how conservation occurs, how community outreach occurs all over the world in this case, different
Hmm.
examples from British Columbia to Sweden to Mexico and the Yucatan Peninsula, and of course Africa, which is a favorite of ours, Francis and mine. But it is a treatment on that. I'm working on another one right now because it's a disease. I was talking to somebody and I said Churchill had it right. It really is a disease to write books, but it's I think it gives a good that Bringing Back the Wild. I really enjoyed writing because there are just so many good stories. And what I mean by
Yeah.
that is not necessarily that I'm writing good stories, but rather good stories about good people and folks who are the individual boots on the ground. We're not talking about NGOs or anything like that. We're talking about folks who are living in those areas and doing what I call God's work. So,
Mhm. It's about sharing your experiences.
mm-hmm.
Life is a series of experiences. You do a lot of traveling. You go to Africa every year. You're around the country doing different things. And if you could share your experience that not everybody has the opportunity to do, they get to live vicariously through your eyes.
Well, and we are so fortunate. I mean, I have been so fortunate all my career as a professor to get to go all over the place to teach short courses and speak and all this sort of thing. And I mean, really fortunate. It didn't have to turn out that way. And it's the same way with the hunting and getting to go and study these areas and look and see what folks are doing. We're heading back to Africa in June again. We'll be in the Eastern Cape in South Africa on low fenced property and doing some articles for Sports Afield from there, and then going to Mozambique to one of our favorite places, Catata 11, that I wrote my first book, Bringing Back the Lions, about. And we're going there for some articles for Sports Afield about the lion reintroductions and cheetah reintroductions, an update on those. They wanted that. But also hunting a little bit and getting out. Francis, I got to tell you, this is a good anecdote. So when you go to Catata 11, you have the opportunity to hunt Cape buffaloes because they have, goodness gracious, I don't even know what the number is in that 500,000. This is an unfenced area, 500,000 acres. They must have upwards of 40,000 buffaloes back in there, Cape buffaloes in that. Wow. 500,000. I know, it's a huge number. Lots of them are in what they call the swamps, which are really freshwater marshes. I keep trying to tell Mark Haldane, you're calling it the wrong darn thing, dude. As a biologist, I can tell you they're actually freshwater marshes. So all of y'all out there are going to hunt with Mark, tell him it's the wrong word. He will ignore you just like he does me. But they call it the swamps, and it is swampy in the sense of water and up to your waist in certain places. Now, there's a lot of crocodiles out there, and Mark doesn't want that probably shared, but there are crocodiles out there. And Frances, my wife, is my photographer, videographer. She does not hunt. And she went up in a helicopter with Mark and did a bunch of photography. It was a two-person helicopter, so I wasn't allowed to go. I don't even know, hey, I want to go. She said, sorry, this is my trip. And I said, yes, ma'am. So she went up with Mark, and she photographed in that area, and she saw the crocodiles and all this sort of thing. And then we went and did a Cape buffalo hunt out in the freshwater marsh where she had been photographing. And she had such a great time and we only did what's called a community buffalo hunt. I have never actually taken a trophy Cape buffalo where I brought back the trophy, quote unquote, horns and stuff. We did a community buffalo hunt, which was purely a meat hunt. We paid for it and then took the meat to the local village. And we're going back this time. And Frances said, I want to do a community buffalo hunt again. And I said, well, I could do a trophy hunt. She said, nope. I want to do a community buffalo hunt where we take the meat to the community. And because you see the families, they get their 10 pounds of meat that they're all get every week from the hunting and all this. And I said, do you want to hunt on dry land? Because the buffaloes have spread out. She said, no, I want to go into the freshwater marsh. And I said, sweetheart, you do know there are crocodiles out there. She said, and she looked at me and grinned and said, yeah, I know. And I was thinking, darn, I don't have life insurance anymore. Why do you want me to get eaten by a crocodile? But I think she and Mark Haldane have some thing going where he's going to pay her if I get nailed or vice versa. So, but we're going to go out there. And all kidding aside, we're really looking forward to harvesting another Cape buffalo that's not a trophy bull, mature, but not a trophy bull, will never grow horns large enough and pretty enough or whatever to be a trophy. And then what it does is it gives 60 families about 600 pounds of bone meat. So 60 families will get their 10 pounds. So a whole village will get their 10 pounds for their weekly allowance of red meat off of that one animal. And that's one of the major conservation efforts there, or mechanisms by which conservation occur, because the folks aren't starving.
Yeah.
They don't need protein through poaching. They're getting it
Hmm.
from us hunters year round.
Yeah. Yeah, that helps. That helps. So, um, you just started a podcast.
Oh, you're so
What made you
kind.
want to jump into this crazy world of podcasting?
Well, yeah, I know. I mean, the thing about it is, I was head of my department for 4 years. Throughout those 4 years, and I stepped down this last December in 2025. Thankfully, it was a great job to help out my department at the University of Georgia. But I was the head of the department. And that's I had 450 folks that I took care of every day, and so there was always a problem of some sort, and it's just comes with the job. But anyway, during that 4 years, pressure mounted up from two people in particular, and his name keeps coming up: Larry Weishuhn and my sweet wife, Frances. And what they said was essentially, you can talk under wet cement and get a post hole to speak to, or a post to speak to you. Why don't you set up a podcast and about your conservation science and stuff and interview folks? And I just said for 4 years, there's no way, I don't have the bandwidth. Well, when it came real close to the time, that pressure really mounted from those two individuals and from some other folks who recommended it. And I said, all right, I'll do that. And that's why that was the genesis. We're good friends, sweet friends, including my wife, who said, look, you ought to consider doing this. We think you'd be good at it. So,
Yep.
yeah, I entered the podcast landscape, and it's called Bringing Back the Wild. You can find it on my website, mikearnoldoutdoors.com. And I made Larry be the very first guest. I said, all right, this is your fault, and Francis is
You
going to be
talked
a
me into
guest.
it, you're jumping in.
Yes, you owe me. And I'm going to interview Frances fairly soon, too, as a non-hunter, and how she views going on all these trips. She loves shooting. She particularly loves PDWs, personal defense weapons, and she's very good with them, and that scares me sometimes. But she loves shooting and the shooting sports, particularly handguns and that sort of thing. Is very good shot and very good markswoman, but she doesn't have no interest whatsoever to hunt. Just
That's
she doesn't
okay.
have anything against it. She goes on all my trips, does the photography, the videography, and all that. She doesn't have an aversion to hunting. She loves meat. She loves game meat. But I want to interview her real soon, and I've told her you're up, real soon. And as a non-hunter, what's your view? And she's going to do a wonderful job. She'll do a beautiful job. But I told her she
That
owed
should
me
be
too.
interesting.
She will be.
You know,
She will be. I have some other women actually who were non-hunters who are now hunters, who are I'm going to also two of them actually, and I'm going to be interviewing them. One who grew up thinking she would never hunt because she had a philosophical stance about it. She wasn't really
hmm
anti, but she was thinking she would not hunt. And another one who was introduced to it by her fiance. And so I'm going to I want to introduce them to our podcast too.
you know who would be a really interesting interview? Paul McCartney, a vegan's point of view versus a hunter's point of view.
I would love that. Yeah, if you
Well,
know his contact information.
yeah, well, sorry. I know a lot of people, but they don't run that deep. Travel in
No, I
different
don't.
circles.
Well, and I have vegan friends, and when I tell people that, they're like, who are in the hunting industry in particular, they go, seriously? And I said, oh yeah. I mean, I showed a So I always ask my students and to send me funny slides so I can put them into my PowerPoints, especially for classes and that sort of thing, but also for talks at like SCI and things like that. And I showed my kids one yesterday, and I said, before I show you this came from one of my students, graduate students, PhD student, and I said, she sent it to me, and she's a vegan. And so we get along real well, but it's a big billboard out of Saskatoon that says, there's room for all of God's creatures. And then the next line says, right next to the mashed potatoes. And and then it has the steak game house name underneath it. And she said, I knew you'd like this one.
That's funny.
Oh.
All right. Well, we are running out of time, but where can we find your podcast?
All right. So it is bringingbackthewild.com, because the name of the podcast, like my second book, is book about hunting anyway and conservation, is Bringing Back the Wild. So it's bringingbackthewild.com. You can also go, though, to my website, mikearnoldoutdoors.com. And there's a pull down there, and you can see all of the different episodes. Unlike Chris, I do not have hundreds yet. You're only going to see about 6 so far, because we only started in January, and I'm doing it twice a month. But we've had everybody from Governor Armstrong from North Dakota, to Robbie Kroger from Origins. We have Larry, of course, is on there. Diana Rupp is on there from Sports Field. So we've had a lot of good folks. I'm going to get this crazy guy on there real soon, too, to talk to us about his life as a hunter in New York.
Yeah, it's interesting. All right, Mike, I want to thank you again for taking the time to speak to us. Go to the website, check it out. I want to thank Safari Club International, Underwood Ammo, and Hunt of a Lifetime for sponsoring this episode. And we'll see you again next week.
Thank you, sir.
We love our children. We protect them. We guide them. We prepare them for life in the world. With all that we do, from deep in our hearts, we cannot control all things. Life-threatening illnesses and disabilities affect far too many of our children each year. While we cannot change the circumstance, we can make dreams come true. Dreams to provide hope, to provide spiritual healing and strength, to provide moments of happiness and relief in the hardest of times. We can give a glimmer of light and hope in a time of darkness and despair. Join huntofalifetime.org to help make dreams come true, to provide hope for children with life-threatening illnesses and disabilities. Hunt of a Lifetime is a non-profit organization fulfilling dreams for hunting and fishing trips to youth 21 and under with life-threatening illnesses and disabilities. Visit huntofalifetime.org to learn how you can make a difference.